पता नहीं कौन किया जा रहा है डिवाइस। भैया अपने लैपटॉप से ब्लूटूथ ऑफ कर देना।
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in, first of all, on a Saturday morning. I would be your host today, who will be walking you through the entire presentation. And I'm Rajdeep Pundi. I am the co-founder and CEO of ReWiser. I've been running ReWiser for the last 6 years. And in today's webinar, we are going to talk about everything about the SATs and ECTs exam. And I'm sure all of you are aware that these are the exams that the student has to write if they wish to pursue undergrad abroad, right? And predominantly US. We're also going to look at what are the other geographies, other countries where SAT, STs are acceptable. We will also talk about, there's a lot of confusion among the parents community about test blind, test optional, should they write it, should they not write it, why should they write it? We're going to talk about all of that today and try and clear all those doubts through today's webinar. And in addition to that, if in case you guys have any question pertaining to admissions, SATs, ACTs, AP exams, you can ask all those questions towards the latter half of the presentation today. So the format that we're going to use it for the first 30-35 minutes, I'm going to walk you through this entire presentation, and post that we will open it for Q&A session. So everyone is invited to ask their question either towards the end, or even if required, they could do it while we are going through the session itself, but just put it on the chat section. Please be on mute and we will take up these questions towards the latter half, right? With that format, I hope everyone is clear on that. Let me start on the presentation today. So these are the key takeaways that we are going to talk about from today's webinar. By the end of today's webinar, in the next 1 hour, the objective should be that you guys should be very, very clear in terms of what are these standardized tests. When people talk about standardized tests, what are these? Who should write it? Why should they write it? When should they write it? What is the importance of SAT, ST for different grades? And we're going to cater to grade 9, 10th, 11, 12. So we're catering to the 4 different grades students and the parents. What is the timeline of SAT, ST with regards to the college application? As we are aware, the college application starts pretty early, unlike the Indian admissions or for the US admission. Hence, it's very, very important to note that timeline. So we're gonna talk about the timelines in detail. We would also have added a slide which talks about what are the other countries that accept SAT, ACT. And we've, paid a lot of attention towards India, because a lot of parents come back and say, what if after 2 years our plan changes, we want to stay in India? Are these scores useful, right? So we're going to talk about that as well. Towards the next, we are going to talk about the latest changes in SAT. And this is very, very, very critical, because I'm sure most of you are aware, starting March 2023 next year, SAT is changing the pattern, which becomes super critical for the students who are in grade 11th right now, because that means they have to finish their exam this year itself. And we're going to talk about that also in detail when we talk about latest changes in SAT. And then towards the latter half, just the last presentation, we're going to talk about how ReWiser as a company can help the student to prepare better for SATs or for ACTs or for other exams like AP. What is our pedagogy that we use? What are the different programs that we cater to? So that's how the entire presentation is going to be, right? Now, let me start with the first thing, which is, I'll just quick brief about ReWiser. So we are a high school support company which assists students worldwide help them student achieve their high school academic goals. The grades that we focus are predominantly from grade 9 to grade 12. Our area of expertise actually lies in 2 verticals. The first one is test prep. And under test prep, we cater to SATs, we cater to ACT, we cater to AP exams. So these are our expertise. And then we have another vertical within the company, which is in the academic tutoring space, where we help students for IGCSE, IB, and A-level subject tutoring, right? As you must be aware, when you're applying to colleges abroad, almost about 70% of your school grades, that's what they play an important role. They're as important as almost about 70%. Then comes your standardized test, which is your SAT, ACT. Then comes your profile building, your overall profile, right? Hence, we try and cover up the 2 major aspects of your college admission, which is your school grades, just to make sure that you're on top of it. And secondly, we help you with your standardized test prep, which is SAT, ST, and AP exams. So over the last 6 years, we have helped about 3,500 odd students we have catered to about 20 plus cities and about 6 plus countries across the globe. So far, the highest SAT score that our students have gotten is 1590 out of 1600. Individually, the highest in English is 800 on 800. The highest in math is 800 on 800. The highest ACT score as a company that we have achieved is 36 on 36. And that has been gotten by multiple students across different tests every year. With that, let me quickly deep dive into the ACTs, right? So as I said, these are standardized tests for undergrad applicants, which is needed by most of the four-year colleges. When I say most, there is a reason for it. And remember, I was talking about there's something called test optional, there's something called test blind. Let me try and help you understand that, right? So when you start applying to the colleges, there would be some colleges which will appear to, and they will say that we are test optional. That means if in case you have done the SAT, you can submit the score. If you have not done the SAT, you can skip the score. However, this test optional came into picture because of the pandemic over the last 2 years. But what we have seen after looking at the 2 years admission cycle, all the students who have submitted their SAT scores in test optional colleges had better acceptance rate as opposed to the students who have not submitted it. And the reason is very simple. Remember, the reason why they got test optional is because there were a lot of countries across the globe where SAT could not happen. And because of that, they kind of gave this option of test option. However, in India, if you look at it, across 2 years, out of 10 times when SAT happens, there are only 2 days when the SAT got cancelled, which was May of last year and last year. Apart from that, SAT happened every time. So, they kind of put a question saying that if your peers have done the SAT, then why have you not done it, right? So you have to have a very solid reasoning to explain why you are not submitting it, if in case you're not submitting it for a test optional college. That's one. Then there is a second set of college, which we call as test blind, right? And there are very few such colleges. All the UCs, all the colleges in California, University of California has a certain set of colleges. UC Berkeley, UC LA, UC San Diego, UC Davis. All these colleges are test blind, and they have been test blind for last 5 years. That means UCs are not going to look at the SAT or the ACT scores, right? And apart from UCs, there are very, very few colleges you can count on fingers, which are test blind. Apart from that, every other college will require you to submit SAT, ACT. So I hope I'm able to, burst that myth about, test optional, test blind. If any question, please put it on the chat section. Why do colleges want you to write this exam, right? So the idea here is that they want to figure out how ready the child is in terms of the preparedness level for college work, right? If you realize in India, we have CBSE, ICSE, IGCSE, IB, A levels, state board, Maharashtra board, UP board, this and that, right? So there are already so many boards. And across the globe, if you look at it, there will be so many different curriculums which are happening. How do they figure out student on a common benchmark, right? So SAT becomes a common benchmark for them to assess the preparedness level of child, whether they are capable of handling the college level work or not. That's the reason they give this test. Now, what does this test entail? So it basically entails verbal and quantitative reasoning. So basically maths and English is what it is. Mandatory for most of the US colleges, and it helps in many other geographies as well, as we have already discussed. Now let's try and understand and spend some time on SAT, AST. What are these two tests? Who writes it? Who conducts it? And so on. Very important slide, guys. So SAT is conducted by an organization called College Board, and ACT on the other hand is conducted by an organization called ACT.org. So these are two different companies which are competing for the same set of students to write their exam. Just to help you understand, think it of like you have a CBSE curriculum, you have an ICSE curriculum. Student can opt for CBSE and ICSE. They both are equally acceptable. That's why I'm giving this analogy. They both are equally acceptable. However, child can write both. One might be difficult, one might be easy. That's secondary. But in terms of acceptability, they both are equally acceptable. It's two different companies fighting for the same set of students, simple. In terms of SAT, SAT is a pen and paper test. ACT on the other hand is an online test. SAT happens 5 times a year. The next one is in August, then October, then December, March, and May. These are the timelines when the SAT happens. On the other hand, if you look at ACT, ACT happens 7 times a year, which is in the month of, the next one is happening in July, September, October, December, Feb, April, and June. So these are the 7 dates when ACT happens. The reason why ACT happens more often is because it's online, less logistical nightmare, and hence they are able to do it more often. And in terms of SAT, since it's a pen and paper test, you get your scores within 15 days. So even if you are in grade 12 today and you have not done SAT so far, don't be worried about it. You could still write it in August or write it in October as well, because your college application starts early October, but they continue up until Jan 15th, right? So you, even if you write October SAT in grade 12, you would still be able to submit your score well ahead of time. December is a bit late, so please avoid December if in case you're in grade 12 right now. For ACT again, the scores comes pretty quickly because it's an online test. The scores are out maybe in just about 3 to 4 days. So you can write up until October, same just like SAT here as well, if in case you're in grade 12. This is predominantly for those students. Now, when you look at duration, in terms of duration, SAT is a 3-hour long test. On the other hand, if you look at ACT, ACT is a 3-hour, 40-minute test. And let's try and deep dive into both these tests, how they are two different. Right? First of all, in SAT, there are 4 sections. The first section that you would encounter in exam would be the reading section, which is like a reading comprehension section. Here, you will have a total of 5 passages, which will entail a total of 52 questions. And you have about 65 minutes, 1 hour, 5 minutes to solve these 52 questions. In this stipulated time, you have to read the passage and answer the question. All of them are multiple choice questions. So you have 4 options being provided. You have to choose the correct answer and encircle in the bubble sheet. That is what you need to do in the reading comprehension. Now, what sort of passages, and this is considered to be one of the most difficult section for the Asian students, for Indian students, right? And the reason is very simple, because we don't read, unfortunately, right? So hence it becomes really difficult, because they test you on your science, social science, history, humanities, fiction, literature. They're going to test you on different zones. It's important for you to start reading if you want to really do well in the reading comprehension. So if there are parents and students who are in grade 9, you are well ahead of time. Please start reading. That's a very, very important thing. Now, people might ask, where should I start reading? So I would say maybe start from Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, maybe subscribe to one of these and start reading different articles. That will help you in the long run. If you're already in grade 11, the reading, I don't think would help so much. I think then it's all about strategies that you need to learn to tackle certain types of questions, right? After the reading section is done, you have to move to the writing section. Please do note, within the reading section, if you're done with your reading section in, let's say 50 minutes and you have 65 minutes, you still cannot jump to the next section. You still have to stay in the same section itself. So it is time bound, sectional wise. You have to stay to the same section for 65 minutes, irrespective of whether you have done it or not done it. Then the next section is the writing section, which is predominantly the grammar section. There are total of 44 questions, and there are total of 4 passages with 11 questions each. So total of 44 questions, and you have 35 minutes to solve these questions. Now, what does writing entails? You don't have to write. Let me be very clear. So there are passages given, and they would underline few errors in those passages. You need to rectify those errors. So there are 4 options. You need to just let us, you just have to tell whether A is the right answer or B or C or D, right? That's exactly what you need to do in the writing section. Though I have very conveniently written it as a grammar rule, I want to again emphasize here, it's almost about 70% that they're testing you on grammar rules, and they call it as standard English conventions. However, there is almost about 30% portion where they're still testing your understanding of the passage. And hence, it's important that you are again good with your reading skills. So as I said, reading is a very super critical skill, whether it's SAT or it's ACT. Once this section is done, you have a break, and then the math start. You have 2 math sections. The first math section would be the math without the calculator. You have a total of 20 questions, and you have a total of 25 minutes to solve these questions. Out of these 20 questions, you have 15 questions, which are multiple choice questions, just like reading and writing, where you have 4 options. You have to choose your correct answer. However, there are 5 questions which are grid in response question. Now, what is grid in response question? There'll be a question given to you. There are no answer options provided. You have to write your answer
directly to your connected. Got it. Just give me a second, sir. I'm just updating it.
Sharath, can you go on mute, please?
Okay. Yes. Tell me, sir.
Sharath, can you go on mute, please?
383.
Sorry, guys, sorry for that confusion. Yes, so we have the maths no calculator section. So we were talking about the gradient response question where they have to just fill in the details in the space provided. An answer could be 1.2, 2 by 4, 1 by 2, 0.1. You know, that's the answer that you need to put in the space. The next section that you have is the maths with calculator, wherein you have a total of 38 questions and you have 55 minutes to solve these questions. And out of these 38 questions, you have 30 again free multiple choice question, and you have 8 questions which are gradient response questions again. That's a total of 38 questions. Please note in the entire math, in the entire SAT, there is no negative marking. So it is advisable for all of you to go ahead and attempt all the questions without skipping anything because you're not missing out on anything, right? So that's how the SAT is stacked in terms of the sections and 3 hours. Now, contrary to this, if I look at ACT, the first section in ACT is the English section, which is very similar to the grammar section or the writing section of the SAT, right? Now, here, there are total of 75 questions and you have 45 minutes to solve these questions. You know, so that means you are under immense time pressure in ACT in the English section. And here, again, same thing, you know, there's a passage given, they will underline the errors, you have to rectify those errors, and there are answer options provided. Unlike SAT, there are 5 options in the grammar section of the ACT. That's one difference that you will notice. Then comes the second section, which is the math section. Another difference here, the maths here is with calculator. So you are allowed to use the calculator all throughout your ACT, unlike SAT where you have a separate calculator and a separate no calculator section, right? So that's another difference. Now, if you look at the number of questions, there are 60 questions and you have a total of 60 minutes to solve these questions. That means you have about a minute per question to solve a math question in ACT, which is again time pressure, because if you had noticed in SAT, you had roughly about 1.5 minutes per question. But that also means the questions are a lot more straightforward here, right? So that's a major difference between the 2 tests. Then comes the third section, which is your reading section. Again, reading comprehension section, very similar to the SAT first section. However, there are only 4 passages here. Every passage will have 10 questions. That's a total of 40 questions. And you have 35 minutes to solve these questions. That is what is entailed in the reading comprehension. And again, just like SAT, you will have social science, humanities, fiction, history, you know, you'll have passages from different zones. And then comes a very important section, which is the 4th section of ACT, known as ACT science section. And very important point here, a lot of confusion exists around this point. So a lot of parents and students comes to me and say, hey, Rajdeep, you know what? We don't plan to apply for a STEM degree. So do I still need to write the ACT because there's a science section there, right? And my assumption is if there is a science section, this is more suitable for the student who wants to apply for science majors. And my answer is no. You know, that's a big misconception that people have here, because ACT science is actually, there's no science involved in this. This is predominantly a reading section. So you are reading science-based passages and answering the question. So remember that ACT science is purely reading and there is no science as such. It's not important if you have read those passages or not in the past, if you've done those experiments in the past or not. Obviously, you will have an advantage if you've done it because you have some context. Otherwise, it could be considered like an unseen passage and you can solve these questions. I hope that clarify a bigger misconception here. ACT science is nothing but a reading comprehension section. Even if you are not good at science, you could still write the ACT. It will not hamper your scores. Number of questions, again, 40 questions, just like reading, 35 minutes, just like reading. So you have a less than minute per question to solve every question, read the passage and answer the question. So these are the 4 sections that you have in ACT. And then, unlike SAT, in ACT, you have an essay component, which is an optional essay component. So if you want, you can write it. If you want, you can skip it. If you would have asked me a year back, Rajdeep, should I do this optional essay component? I would have said, yes, you should do it. The reason being, 1 year back, even SAT had the optional essay component, which SAT, you know, kind of let go last year, starting March. and now there is no essay component there. So my advice would be you can skip the ACT essay component as well, because all the students who probably would have done ACT would not have done the essay. So there is no point of comparison. So if you want to skip it, you could skip it. If you want to write it, you could still write it if you feel you're good at it and you can write it. Though it will not hamper your regular ACT score. ACT essays are scored separately on a scale of 2 to 12, 1 to 12. So essays are scored very, very differently as opposed to everything else, right? So that's how the entire 4 sections in ACT and SAT looks like. If there are more questions, as I said, please put it on the chat section. I already see a few questions coming in. I'm going to take all those questions towards the latter half. Now, since we have understood how the sections look like, let's try and understand how the scoring works, right? A very excited topic for all of us, I guess. So in total, SAT is out of 1600 points, whereas 800 is for English. That means there is 400 for reading, 400 for writing. That makes a total of 800 for English. And for maths, you have another 800. That's a total of 1600 SAT score. Just to give you a perspective, if the child gets 1500 or 1500 plus in SAT, you are at 99th percentile. So you are in the top 1 percentile bracket, right? So that's the score that one has to target if you really are looking for the top 10, top 15 universities. Otherwise, 1450, 1480, anything between 1450 to 1500 is also considered to be a good score. The more you have, the better it is, not just in terms of admission, but I think in terms of making your profile look more stronger, academically at least, right? Now, on the other hand, if you look at ACT is on a scale of 36 points, and it's graded slightly differently. Here, every section like English, maths, reading, science, all of them are graded out of 36 points. And then the average of the 4 is found out, and that becomes your final score, which is your 36. So for example, in English, you might have a score of 32, maths 33, reading 34, science 32. The average of all of them would be found out, and then your final score would be decided. That's how your ACT score looks like. Again, to give you a perspective, 34 out of 36 here is the 99th percentile. So generally 34 is equivalent. If you look at the concordance table, which is given by the College Board and ACT together, 1500 is very equivalent to 34 in ACT, right? So 1500 to 1520 range is generally considered to be 34, right? So that's how the two concordance table works, right? If in case you have done one test and you have to see where do you stand in the other one, that's how you can figure it out. So with this, I have done the major section of difference between SAT and ACT. I hope that kind of helped you understand which is a test which is more suitable for you, or which one do you want to write. However, my strong recommendation to every student who is here on the call, of the parent who has to take this call, whether the child should write an SAT or ACT, the best way to do this is by doing a diagnostic test. At ReWiser, we offer a free diagnostic test service where you could write one diagnostic for SAT, one for ACT, look at your scores, and then take a call whether you are good at SAT or you're good at ACT. As I've already told you, ACT is very, very time intensive. However, the questions are a lot simpler. Now it's a matter of you figuring out what is more suitable for your style, right? And hence the diagnostic test is the only way out to figure this out. Moving on, there's something called PSAT, and a lot of people might have questions around this, especially the students who are in grade 8th and grade 9th. What is PSAT and should I write it? Is it mandatory? So PSAT is nothing but a simplified and a shorthand version of SAT. It's called practice SAT or a preliminary SAT to say so, right? Unlike SAT, PSAT happens only once a year. It is conducted by the school itself. In some cases, your school might be the host school as well. In other cases, where the school feels there are not enough students who wants to apply, they might want to apply. You might want to look at other schools in your city who could probably apply for you as a Psat center. These exams are either done by the school in October or towards the March timeframe. So you could you could go to the College Board website, look at the test centers which are offering Psat in your city, and then call up those centers and ask them when they are conducting this exam. And you can go ahead and pay the fees and so on. However, why should I write it, right? So Psat is just a practice SAT, right? This is the only advantage, or the bigger advantage that I see here is that you get to know, let's say in grade 8th, grade 9th, that where do you stand at this point of time globally, right? And what are the areas that you need to work upon? So if you don't, or if you feel you can't practice at home and get this data, you might as well go out, write this exam and get a holistic picture in terms of where you stand. So that could be one of the reasons. So one of the reason is to understand where do I stand globally at this point of time. You could write the PSAT. The second major reason, and a very important reason to note here, however, this is only for the parents and the students where the student is a US citizen. If in case the student is a US citizen and you are in grade 11th, you should be writing the PSAT, which is also known as NMSQT, which is nothing but the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. This is important because it helps you to A, get scholarship, and B, even if you don't get a scholarship and if you qualify the round 1, you could write it in your application that you know you have cleared the first round of NMSQT. That will help you again to overweigh your application as opposed to your peers. But this is only and only important for, remember, for US citizens. And you have to write this Psat in grade 11th. Then only Psat is considered as NMSQT. So these are the two important things that you should consider. There is third reason why some people write PSAT, and that reason is basically for summer schools. So there are some competitive summer schools in US where you could go to summer school after your 10th grade or after your 9th grade during the summer break. And if you want to go to a good one, there are some of them which will ask you to submit your scores if in case you have done any Psat. Because they're doing a selection, they are trying to figure out some parameters based on which they can differentiate the candidates, right? So Psat becomes a critical factor at that point of time, right? So that's one of the reasons why people write it, right? So A, to know your understanding globally, B, for scholarship, grade 11 US citizen, C, for summer school. These are the only three reasons why one should even think about writing the PSAT. If you are not looking for any of these, you don't really have to write the PSAT, right? Now, how are these two tests different from each other? Let me just put it next to SAT and help you understand, since now we have a very clear understanding of the SAT. Psat has the exact same 4 sections, just like SAT, which is your reading, writing, maths no calculator, and maths calculator section. In the reading section, unlike SAT where you had 52 questions, you have only 47 questions here, and you have 1 hour to solve these 47 questions. Then you have the writing section where you have 44 questions, 35 minutes, similar to what you have it in the SAT writing. I would request everyone to just be on mute. Okay, then the next section that we have is the maths no calculator section, wherein there are a total of 17 questions and we have 25 minutes to solve these questions. Unlike SAT, where we had 20 questions and we had 25 minutes to solve this question, right? And in SAT, again, in maths calculator section in Psat, you have 31 questions and 45 minutes. Unlike SAT, where you had 38 questions and 55 minutes. So that's the major difference between the 4 sections. So if you've realized, that's the reason why I said that it's a shorthand version of SAT, because you know everything you take SAT and you trim down number of questions all the time, that becomes a PSAT. Obviously, the difficulty level of question is slightly easier as well. And they are different in terms of scaling since there are less number of questions. So the highest score that one can get in Psat is 1520 and not 1600. Sectionally, you can get maximum of 720, 716 English, sorry, and 716 math. That's the highest score that you could get in Psat, unlike SAT where you can get the highest of 1600. So that's about the Psat. Now, as I said in the beginning, we are going to talk about a very, very important topic, which is the latest changes in SAT. And this is super critical for all the students and the parents, where the students are in grade 11th or going into grade 11th and have just finished grade 10. And the reason why I'm saying that is because these changes are being introduced starting March next year, which basically means that the students who are in grade 11th right now, or who are going into grade 11th right now, they only have 3 attempts left unless they want to write a changed SAT, which I would not recommend because as of now, nobody knows how this new SAT will look like. There are a few parameters which are known and which we are going to discuss about, but we don't know how the exact paper will pan out, how the scoring will work, and so on. My recommendation, and a very, very strong recommendation, would be if you are in grade 11, finish off your SAT within the next 3 attempts, and those attempts are in August, October, and December. So between these 3 attempts, figure out your maybe 2 attempts when you can write maybe October and December, because August is too early, and finish off your SAT with the old pattern itself. Now, what are those changes? Let's talk about those. So one of the major change which is happening is the test is being reduced from 3 hours to 2 hours. That's a huge change. It's being cut down by almost 1/3. There will only be 2 sections instead of 4 sections. That's another change. Though the 2 sections will have the same content. They will have reading, writing, maths, but they would be divided only in 2 sections. Students will have more time per question. That's another change which is happening. Remember, in SAT, we already had extra time. Now they're saying they will have more time per question. That also means they might increase the complexity of the questions, right? Again, this is pretty early for us to even guess that. But yeah, based on these parameters, that's what you could guess. The test will be online, just like ACT. It will no longer be a pen and paper test. It's going to be an online test. And an additional thing is you can actually take this test on your own devices, maybe laptop, tablet, whichever device you want to take it. However, you still have to go to the center. So it's online, not from home. It's online from the center. So you have to visit a center, maybe take your own device and then do it. They might ask you to install a particular software for security purposes. The testing app would save the student progress while they work. So again, this is a learning that they probably have done from the ACT. So ACT has this issue where, sometimes what happened, the system stopped working, but the time was going forward at the back. And, a lot of students complained about it. And hence probably they would have done this thing where, the testing app would save and you could restart from the same time where you had, switched it off. Use of calculator throughout the math section. Remember, this was another difference between SAT and ACT, where ACT allows you to use the calculator all throughout. SAT has calculator, no calculator section. Now they're getting rid of that entire thing and they're saying you are allowed to use calculator throughout the math section, right? So if you look at it, there are a lot of parameters where they have learned from ACT and they're moving towards it. One is use of calculator. Another one is online exam, right? So these are 2 major changes that has happened very similar to ACT. One of the important change, the test is going to be adaptive in nature. And hence I'm saying, don't wait for next year to write the SAT, finish it off with this year, because you don't know how this adaptive will play around. By adaptive, what do I mean? They have already said there will be 2 sections. So the first section, let's say if there are 10 students in this room who are writing the exam, all the 10 students will get the same section, same set of questions in the first section. However, depending on your performance in the first section, the system will throw different set of sections to each one of us, depending upon how we have done it in our first section. That is test adaptive, right? And that is how it happens in GMAT as well. And they have kind of taken it up from the same, and the test is going to be adaptive. However, if you look at ACT is an online test, but it is not an adaptive test, right? So that's another major difference. Scores will be released sooner, obviously, because it's online, just like ACT. You will be able to get the results much faster. SAT will also start happening more often, maybe 7-8 times a year. That's an advantage to all of us. However, as I said, you don't want to, you don't want to be the guinea pig when the SAT changes the pattern. And remember, in US, they're not changing it. In US, the change will be applicable only from 2024. So 2023, they want to run across the globe, see how it works out. If it all settles down, then in 2024, they will start it in US, right? So we are ideally the guinea pig here, and I would not recommend anybody, if they can avoid, don't be that guinea pig, right? Moving on, as I said, very, very important thing. Though this is something that I would prefer to do one-on-one with each student. And towards the end of the webinar, and also at the end of the webinar, we're going to send you a Calendly link invite for my colleague's calendar. And you can book your one-on-one slots, where individually for each child, we can figure out how does this entire timeline would look like for you, right? This entire testing timeline. So if you're in grade 9, how should you plan your next 4 years? If you're in grade 10, how should you plan your next 3 years? Grade 11, the next 2 years, and grade 12 immediately, right? So if you look at on a high level, there is a Psat exam that you can write it in grade 9. In grade 10, if you have not done the Psat, you can write the Psat if you want to. Otherwise, you start with you write your SAT. Definitely start it in the summer break of grade 10 and try and finish your first attempt of SAT right after your summer break, which is the August of grade 11. By the time you should have done at least one attempt of SAT or ACT, you should know where do you stand and do you need to write it again. If you need to write it again finish it off in grade 11th itself, right? Now, as I told you, if you are a US citizen in grade 11, you also need to write your PSAT because that's also considered an MSQT for the National Merit Scholarship Test. So that is something that you also need to do in grade 11. And this is the time, rather, there are students in the past who have started writing AP exams. I don't want to go deep into these AP exam because that will become another half an hour topic. And we are conducting another webinar next month, hopefully, which is going to be purely on AP. APs are advanced placement courses. These are college level courses that you can write to strengthen your profile, to gain college credits while you are in India, to save money, to save cost. These are the three reasons why people write AP exam. If you want to go in detail, you could visit our YouTube channel. We have done few webinars on AP. You could look at that. Otherwise, we will be doing another one live next month. Please go ahead and attend it. We will be talking in detail about those AP exams. Now, AP exam happens only once a year, which is in the month of May. So you have to plan it very, very wisely when you want to write it. How many APs do you want to write it? Do you want to write 2, 3, 4? You have the entire luxury depending on your preparedness level. So that could be done in grade 10. That could be done in grade 11. That could also be done in grade 12. However, it will not be a further profile, but purely for college credits and to save money. You could also do it after grade 12. And obviously, in grade 12, majority of your time is going towards your college prep, the entire application, your common application, your coalition application. If you're applying for UK, then your Oxbridge application, UCAS application. So there are so many applications that you have to write. I mean, just to give you a perspective, if you're applying to 10 colleges, you will be writing at least about 30 odd essays, right? So which is going to be super, super tight for you in grade 12. Hence, I'm recommending you to finish everything while you are in grade 11 and not keep it holding up until grade 12. Trust me, college application is a big and mammoth task. You will require to put in a lot of effort. And at the same time, you have to do well in your college schools as well, because those are super critical. Remember, I told you in the beginning, 70% weightage is for your school grades, 9, 10th, 11th. If somebody comes and says school grades are not important, that's a brutal lie. So please don't go by that. School grades are super duper critical. So please make sure you're trying to improve them every time, wherever you get the opportunity. So in bottom, you will see profile development that is happening all across in grade 9 to grade 12. I'm assuming you probably would be doing it before that as well. Profile development is nothing but you doing some internships, projects, research papers, participating in some competitions, obviously of your interest level, not just for the sake of profile, because they can see through it, right? And then the college starts, right? So that's how the standard timeline look like. As I said, it has to be a lot more personalized. It cannot be generalized because every child is different. You would be at a different stage of life at this point of time. Feel free to book a free consultation session with us, and we'll be happy to sit with you and help you understand what the timeline would look like for your child. With that, let me move on to an important question, which a lot of parents do ask, and I think it's a very, very fair question, because you're going to spend about 1.5 CR if in case you're looking to go abroad, right? If in case you don't get to the right colleges, is it worth going there? That's a big question, right? And it's in case you decide not to go there because you didn't get the best of colleges, where can you use these SAT scores? So as we are talking today, there are almost about 40 plus universities in India which accepts SAT scores. And some of the top ones are listed here: Ashoka University, Azim Premji, Flame, Kriya, Manav Rashna, Plaksha, Srivnadar. So you look at it, all the new modern age universities which are coming up are tying up with the SATs. So either you could write the SAT score and then submit your scores, or you have to individually write their individual tests. There's a separate test for Ashoka, separate for Flame, separate for Azim Premji. You would not want to, if you want to apply for 5 universities, you would not want to write 5 different tests. You might as well just write one test, which is the SAT, and then apply to these colleges through these SATs, right? So So it is important for you to understand. Here is this link at the bottom, international.collegeboard.org/student/SAT. We'll share this link with you as well. Probably we'll put it up in the chat section. This is the link where you can go and figure out which are the universities in India which accept SAT scores and for which course as well. Please note, for example, SRM University might not accept SAT score for all the courses. So please be very, very cautious about it, right? Now, on top of these colleges, BITS Pilani also accepts SAT scores for non-Indian citizens, right? So if the child is a US citizen, if you want to stay in India, you don't have to write the BITSAT. Then in that case, you would write the SAT and then you can apply to BITS, right? So BITS is one of those colleges. IIIT Hyderabad is another college. So there are a lot of other good colleges. If in case you are a US citizen, if you want to stay in India, wherein SAT scores are valid and are applicable, so please look at that list also at the same time. You would not want to wait until the last minute to apply and do these SAT courses. With that, we are in the last phase where I'm going to talk about our pedagogy at ReWiser. So we use a phase-wise approach. We call it a 4-phase approach: phase 0, 1, 2, and 3. Phase 0, as I told you, it's free for everybody. We want everyone to write it, write a diagnostic for SAT, ACT, and understand where you are at this point of time. It's a very super critical thing for the students to do it. And then we start with phase 1. Phase 1 is where the actual live classes are happening. That's where the entire content is being delivered. There are roughly about 40 hours of classes wherein we are giving sessions for maths, English, and science, reading, writing, and science. Every class, if it's a 1 hour class, you have 1 hour of assignment. So 1:1 is the ratio that we maintain, because every class that you learn something new, you also have to apply the same thing. And hence every class is backed up with the assignment. So if there are 40 hours of classes, there are 40 hours of assignment that the student has to do. After every assignment that the child does, they also have to update their scores in something called a score tracker, which is very, very super critical, because that's the point through which we are tracking their score progress. Once this is done, we move to phase 2. Phase 2 is the point where a dedicated mentor gets attached to every student. Now, this dedicated mentor will look at the student score tracker from phase 1, figure out the areas where student is doing well, the area where they need improvement, the area where they lack competency at this point of time, and they would categorize them into different categories. Based on these categories, they will suggest each student depending on what they need to do for each of these sections. For example, a child could be doing great at maths, so their study plan would be different. They're doing okay in reading, their strategies would be different. So the mentor will look at each of their section and based on that suggest them what they need to do to improve it. And this will continue to happen on every week to 10 days basis, where they are looking at their scores, reassessing them, and figuring out where the child is going wrong and helping them improve that, right? That is what is happening at phase 2. So it's a very customized, personalized approach where they are doing a lot of sectional tests. Through the sectional tests, the mentor figure out the areas of improvement and tell them what they need to do to improve it. Once that gets done, we move to phase 3, which is largely about the full length test, wherein student would be doing about 15 to 20 mock tests before they write their final exam. Every test that they write, they get a very detailed report, like almost a 15-page report, which talks about the areas they've done well, the areas they need to improve, and so on and so forth. So all of that happens in phase 3. And this is again super critical. This is the time where again the mentors are part of this. After every 3 tests, the mentor will have one-on-one meeting with every student to figure out where they're going correct, where they're going wrong, what needs to be done to improve it, and so on and so forth. So that's the 4-phase approach that we follow at ReWiser to ensure that the student gets the desired scores. And in the past, we've seen students getting and achieving the desired scores through this philosophy. Few additional things that we also do is, if in case right in the beginning you're not very sure about SAT or ACT, we allow you to start the program with both SAT and ACT. In the phase 1, you learn both, but in phase 2 and phase 3, by the time you reach the phase 2, we will help you figure that out whether you're good at SAT or ACT. So in the same program itself, you could figure out whether you are more suited for SAT or ACT also. That's another USP of this program. It is highly personalized. The next USP is, if in case you write one attempt, you don't get the desired score, you want to write it again, you have that option as well without any additional fees. So we provide you support for the second attempt as well, without any additional cost involved, right? So that's the process and that we follow. That's our pedagogy. That's our methodology that we follow. There are various programs, there are various modules that we have to offer. There's a full training which I just explained you about all the phases. There is something called SDAC study plan. So some kids are coming right now to us and saying, I want to write August, which is like 1.5 months away. I know they can't do the full training because that requires at least 4 to 5 months. So in that case, they opt for study plan, where we provide them the entire phase 1 concept videos. So they do it at their own pace, and they get the mentor support of phase 2 and phase 3, right? So in that way, they don't get restricted by the class timings or anything. They do it on their own. This is suggested only to the students who are very, very driven, focused, and they know what they need to do. That is the study plan, and they have obviously less time and they can't do the full training. And then we also have another program called ST Lite. This is for the students who are already getting 1400, 1450 type score. They only need more tests and analysis on those tests. So they would take the 10 test series. We would give them these tests. We will provide them the detailed analysis report. That is what is being offered under this test. So this program is only for the student who just need more practice. They're already doing well, but they just want to reinforce that they continue to do well, right? That is what is being covered in the ST Lite component. And there are various other combinations which are also available, right? So you can opt for those modules as well. These are some of the modules. Great. With that, I have pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover in the entire presentation. And I will, so here is the number. This is Sharath from my team, who takes care of the entire sales and partnership. So, you can reach out to him, probably post this meeting, set up a call, set up the meeting with him, set up one-on-one appointments. And until then, while you're doing it, let me go and start taking the questions from the chat section. I see there are a lot of questions here. Great. Okay, let me start with the first one. And now is the time if somebody wants to unmute themselves and ask question directly, that's completely fine. Let me just finish off all the questions in the chat section first, and then we can do that as well. Okay, I have a question from Ms. Riddhima. Which one is recommended for entrance in Ivy League college, or SET or ACT? Great question. Thanks you asked this question, Riddhima. There is no difference at all. Remember, I gave that analogy about CBSE and ICSE curriculum, whether you should do an CBSE and ICSE. This question is like, if I have to get into IIT Delhi, should I do CBSE or ICSE? You could do either, right? There's no difference. Very similar to this. If you want to get into Ivy League colleges, there's no difference between SAT or ACT. The only difference is you have to do well. I have a student who has done an ACT, who has gone into Dartmouth, who has actually got into Princeton. He went into MIT. So, with ACT, we have students who have gone to these colleges. With SAT, on the other hand, we have students who have gone to all these top colleges, right? You see Berkeley and you name it. So yes, so it doesn't really matter at all. Thanks for that question. Next question, sorry, how many questions writing? I'm assuming this is for SAT. So SAT, you have a total of 44 questions in writing section, and in ACT, you have a total of 75 questions in 45 minutes. Jishnu, that's for you. Next question I have from Zion Daniel. Sir, if you give both SAT and ACT and one has good score and other has a bit less, the other one, so which one would the college consider? Excellent question. I forgot to mention this. So remember, these are two different companies where you have given the exam. Now it's up to you, which score do you want to submit to the college? It doesn't happen automatically. You have to instruct the college board, let's say in case of SAT, or ac.org in case of ACT, that, hey, you know what? I want to send my scores to UCLA, UC Berkeley, Stanford, Princeton, whatever, XYZ college, right? So you are the one who are telling them when to send the score, who to send the score to. So it doesn't happen automatically. So you can decide based on which test you have a better score, you can submit that particular score. Next question I have from Riddhima again. Oh, it's the same question, Riddhima. I think I've answered it. The next question is from Varun Sadbhai. If UCs are test blind, what do they assess? Amazing question again. So Varun, as I said, right, your entire application is a culmination of 2-3 parameters. The first one is your academics, your school grades, grade 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th predicted. That's the major core of it. at least about 50 to 60% or 50 to 70%, depending on college to college. Some colleges might have more weightage, some might have slightly less weightage. So that becomes super critical. Second major thing is your test prep, which is your SATs or ACTs or AP exams, your entire test prep gamut, where UCs are not looking at it. So this becomes 0. Otherwise, this has 15 to 20% weightage. Then your entire profile building, right? Your entire profile as a student, what do you bring on the table, right? So that becomes a super critical component. So your entire profile, what you have done apart from getting good grades, right? So that becomes a super critical factor for all the UCs, right? Obviously, so second parameter, which I told you about the test prep, does not hold good. Here, the first and the third parameter holds good and their weightage increases, right? So that is what they are looking at. Next question is from Himanshi. So what if a commerce student is finding ACT easier than the SAT? So shall we give them a go ahead for ACT? Definitely, Himanshi, right? There is no, please don't differentiate between a commerce or a science student or an art student any which way, because SAT or ACT, as I told you, ACT science section is predominantly a reading section. Actually, if you ask me, my experience says any student who has been in CBSE and ICSE curriculum would do better in ACT, and any student who has been in AS A-level or IB curriculum or IGCSE curriculum would do better in SAT. Again, this is not to generalize anything, but on a very, very high level, that is what I have observed. I hope I answered that question, Himanshi. Next, I have a question from Vivan. Can we apply for both SAT and ACT? Yes, definitely, Vivan. You can apply for both SAT and ACT. There is no, there's no problem with that. You could apply with both. But remember, you have limited time, right? Would you be able to prepare for both, write both the exam? You know, let's say if you're in grade 10, you have 2 years and you have so many things to do. Trust me on that, right? So you may not want to spend time doing both. You want to figure out which is the one where you are better at and finish it off. Next, I have a question from Zion. Sir, if, for example, we have 1400 SAT and 35 ACT, then which score would the college consider? Zion, I think I answered this question earlier, that you are the one who is sending the score to the college board, right? So you, to the colleges. So you decide which one you want to send to the colleges. Next question is from Devansh. Are these changes for the SAT exam in August? No, Devansh, these are applicable starting March 2023, so next year. Oh, thanks. Ayush has answered this question already. Another question from Mansi. Sir, is STAC mandatory for Canadian and European colleges as well? Great question. It's not mandatory for Canadian or European colleges at all. However, if you look at their application, they have a column where they ask you to submit the SAT scores if in case you have done it, right? So if in case you have done it, you should write it, and if you've done it well, because it might affect your application in a positive way if you've done it well, right? So it's not mandatory, but it's sort of optional there. Next, I have a question from Jishnu. So these changes are after the 3 attempts. That's right, Jishnu. Next question is from Ritu. I assume the scores attained in this year are at par with the new format introduced for colleges in 2024, 2025. Definitely. So, they will figure out a concordance table, and so far, whatever is being told to us looks like the exam would still be out of 1600. Different pattern, different sections, number of sections and everything, but the score is still out of 1600. Next question is from Manat. What is the 99% for SAT? 1500 or 1550? That's 1500. Thanks, Ayush, again for answering that question. Another question from Vidya is SAT mandatory for European colleges as well? I've answered that question with him already. How much time does it take to cover all the 4 phases approx? The question from Zion Daniel. Roughly about 4 to 5 months, Zion. We have group training, we have one-on-one, so those times can be customized, but put aside at least about 4 months if you want to prepare for it. Next, I have a question from Amit Gupta. How long does it take to complete these phases for student in class? Is it possible to cover these phases? Definitely, Amit. These phases get covered in about 4 to 5 months. If the child is in grade 11, I'm assuming they just have gone into grade 11, please start them at the earliest possible. Set up a call with Sharat and discuss it with him. He'll help you understand. We just started about 8 batches. Roughly about 100, 120 students started like last week, who all are in grade 11, just gone into grade 11. So yes, definitely you can start when you're in grade 11 right now. And that's ideally the time when people generally start. But you should start at the earliest possible, just because, as I said, we have to do the exam this year. We cannot delay it until next year, unfortunately. Next question from Divija. So do any Indian university look and consider ACT marks? Excellent question, Divija. There are no universities in India which consider ACT marks. So if in case your plan B is India, don't write ACT in that case, right? So that would be my recommendation. Then only write the SAT because ACT is not considered in India. Another question from Zion Daniel. I think I've answered this question, Zion, already. Please let me know if there is something else that I need to add to this question. Next, I have a question from Sarakshi. Along with SAT, should I give JEE exam as well? And can you please tell me the minimum cost required through whole process? Okay, along with SAT, should I give JEE exam? That's a personal call, Sarakshi, that you need to take, right? Do you want to keep India option open as well? Is Indian colleges are something that you're also looking at? If you're looking at, then you have to write JEE. But if you ask me, my personal advice, decide one boat and be in one single boat rather than trying to be in two different boats, because it is not easy. Whether it's India, whether it's US, both of them are equally difficult to get in. So you would not want to invest your time in JEE and SAT both. Figure out one thing and then work towards it, because it will require a lot of effort. The next part of the question says, tell me the minimum cost required through whole process. I'm not sure which process are you talking about. Are you talking about application to the college? Are you talking about the SAT fees, or are you talking about our fees? So I'm not very clear on that. If you can just expand that question again, it will help, and I'll take it up. Next question is from Poonam Mathur. What is the score required Ivy League college? Great question. I think that's one of the questions a lot of parents ask. There is no such score which can guarantee you admission in Ivy League. Even a 36 on 36, and I'm telling you by my experience, or a 1590 out of 1600 does not guarantee you admission in any Ivy League college. I've had students who had 36 on 36, did not get into any Ivy Leagues, applied to 4 of them. I had another student who had a 1580 out of 1600, applied to almost about 4 or 5 Ivy Leagues, did not get into any Ivy League. So there are various other factors. As I said, please remember, academics, test prep, SAT, ST, AP, and your profile. These are the 3 factors put together. And when I say profile, I'm also including your essays and SOPs, letter of recommendation, everything in this profile component. When you look at these 3, these are the 3 major pillars in your application. Even if one pillar is not strong, your Ivy League admission will not go through. Even if all 3 of them are strong, it may not go through. Let me tell you that as well, because it is highly competitive, right? You may be the best of the best student in terms of academics, but think about it. Let's say you apply to Princeton, but this year Princeton actually wants to take somebody who is, until last year they had somebody in their rowing team, and this year this person got graduated, and they still want to make sure their team is doing well in rowing internationally. So they might prefer a candidate who might has a 1400 SAT score, but he's an international rowing player. They might take this candidate over a 1580 SAT score player, right? Because this year my requirement is, I want to make my rowing team stronger, or I want to make my football team stronger, or I want to make my badminton team stronger, whatever that is, right? You get what I'm saying, right? So it's not just a matter of you showcasing the best. You could be the best, but still colleges may not take you. So please don't take it personally on yourself, especially for the student. Remember, maybe you are not the right fit. That's it. Maybe they were looking for something else this year in terms of the candidate. That's all. So in this case, you're not loser. I mean, basically the college has accepted someone else because they were looking for something else. As simple as that, right? That's how these US college admission works. And I think as a parent, it's important for us to also understand it and rationalize things accordingly. You could be best in all these 3 parameters and still don't get into top colleges, because there are various other parameters that plays around, right? So you could only try your level best. Unlike Indian admission, where it's just, you get a certain score, there's a merit list, you get a rank, and I'll get this college, right? It doesn't work like that in in US. I hope that answers your question, Poonam, and I hope that helps others to understand how this admission works. Next question is from Arav Anil. I'm CBSE student. Will that affect the ST US Europe admission in comparison with the student from IGCSE? Excellent question. And this is one of the questions that I keep hearing from a lot of parents, especially the parents where the child is in grade 9th and 10th, and they come and ask me this question. Hey, Rajdeep, we are in CBSE, my child is in CBSE, should we switch him to IB or IGCSE board? And my answer to that is, a yes and a no. There's no clear-cut answer. Remember, when you have to write the pros and cons and then figure out which is the best option for you. Now, some of the pros is obviously IB scores are more recognized as opposed to CBSE. When you are doing an IB, you get credits for the courses that you have done in IB. However, when you do a CBSE or ICSE, you don't get any credit for the courses that you have done in grade 11th and 12th. So it becomes expensive when you go to US. So these are some of the pros. Now, if you look at the other side of it, con could be when you're changing from CBSE to IB, you're changing to a new school. Will the child be able to adjust? Would he have enough time? B, remember, they need to get the letter of recommendation from college, from your school teachers and counselors. So would the teachers know him enough now in the last 2 years when he has changed the school that they would give him a good letter of recommendation? Is the IB school recognized enough? Is it a famous enough school that it will affect your school? I would not go to a new IB school because they may not have their act together yet. And they will have a lot of things to figure it out because IB is not a very straightforward curriculum. If I'm not very good at English, I may not want to go into IB because remember, all the humanities courses in IB are super duper difficult, right? So it's not easy to do well in IB. So I would figure out a curriculum based on student comfort. Where am I more comfortable at? B, where can I get the best letter of recommendation? If I already have a good reputation in my school, I might stay here. C, whichever curriculum I choose, I need to do exceptionally well. I've been repeating this time and again, at least about 70% is your school grades. So they are super duper critical. Yeah, so based on that, Anil, I would take that call whether I should switch or not. And again, I'm happy to do a personal call with you and figure this out. Next question is from Nikhil. Does NMIMS, I think this is Narsi Munji, accept Psat score? I am not sure, Nikhil. You should check that link, which I told you, which is available on College Board website. This colleges that are accepting Psat scores. Himanshi, all right, great, thanks. Great. Poonam, if there are more than one attempt, do they take the best score? How many attempts are recommended? Great question, Poonam. Now, there are different categories of colleges. There is one set of college which will say submit all your scores, right? Irrespective of the number of attempts. There is second set of college which will say submit the best score. Then there is third category of college which will say submit the best super score. What do I mean by that? You could take English from one and maths from the other one, and that becomes your super score, right? So depending on which college you're applying, that's how these application, that's how your score applying would affect. How many attempts are recommended? I generally recommend 2 attempts, 2 for sure. Some people write 3 as well, which is also fine, but nothing more than 3, because then it looks like you're doing it because you could afford to do it, right? So then, your application tilts in a slightly different direction. So you may not want to do that mistake. 2 at max 3. That's it. That's all. 2 because of super score, if you remember what I mean, right? Great. I have another question from Ayush. Hello, sir. I'm from Nepal. Hey, hi, Ayush. I recently gave my +2 exam, though they did not went as expected. I assume my overall grade will be somewhere around 3. I scored 3.44 in my 11th and 3.85 in 10th. I'm confused my grades are good to give Psat a go or not. Ayush, your 12th grade exam and SAT has no correlevance. Please remember that, right? You can write the SAT irrespective of whether you are in grade 10th, 11th, 12th, right? So please don't get confused with that. Feel free to set up a call with Sharath. His number is there on the thing. You could probably drop him a WhatsApp message and he'll help you understand. You can write and you should write SAT without worrying about your grade 12th scores. Next question from Mr. Varun. ACT required for UK University? No, Varun, you don't need ACT for UK universities. Next question from Ziana. Where do we find the application for the ST and ACT exam, and how do we know the dates for examination? You just Google it. At the end of the webinar, maybe by tomorrow, we're going to send you the recording of this webinar. We'll send you the links where which will tell you about how you can register and so on, right? You could go our website, you'll be able to find all of that. But you can also just Google it saying SAT online application. As I said, SAT is done by College Board and ACT by ACT.org. Another question from Mr. Amit Gupta. Can the preparation be done along with JEE prep? Definitely, Amit, you can do it with JEE Prep. I've seen students who have done this across along with JEE Prep. But as I said, my personal recommendation would be don't do it. Stick to one thing. Don't try to be in two different boats. It becomes really complicated for the student. As a parent, I understand we want to keep all the options open, but you may not, I mean, we may not be doing the best to the child is what my personal suggestion would be. Please try and figure out which is the best option and just stick with it, right? If in case, let's say for some reason JEE doesn't work out, you write the SAT, with not so great prep and, have one score at it because that's your plan B any which ways. And when you start applying, let's say if your JEE doesn't go well, then you apply with that particular score and that's it. Then you obviously are compromising on the level of college you will go in US, right? Because your main prep is JEE. That's one way of looking at it. Another question from Mr. Sajjad. What is your batch size? So our batch size is about 8 to 10 students. And if you also have an option to take completely one-on-one. And when I say batch size, the batch only matters in phase 1, where the classroom training is happening. Phase 2 and phase 3 are completely personalized one-on-one. So yeah, so batch size doesn't really matter after 1.5 months. Next question from Mr. Vyan. How frequently do we have SAT and ACT in a year? When I think you have missed the presentation in the beginning, SAT happens 5 times a year, ACT happens 7 times a year. Next question is from Vidya. Can we give NEET and SAT both to get an Ivy League or colleges in Germany? You don't need NEET to get into an Ivy League or in Germany, Ridhima. Next question from Amit. Do you help with internship aspects of profile building? We can discuss on this, Amit. We can help you out with this as well. Next question is from Ridhima. Because I have to pursue my career in medical field, NEET is important, but SAT plus NEET is possible, right? Yes, definitely. As I said, just like JEE, NEET is another example, right? You can definitely do it, but be very, very clear what you want to do. Remember, especially for the students who wants to pursue medicine in US is a very different ball game. You don't get into medicine in undergrad. You get into pre-med. So medicine in US is a 9-year degree, right? So please do talk to a counselor, have a better understanding of what you're trying to do, because medicine in US is a 9-year degree and it is expensive. So you should be willing to invest that much time and money into it. So please be very cautious when you're taking that call. If you want to take that call, please do enough research, talk to people, and then take that call. Next question from Vayan. Can you please tell the 3 most important parameters to guarantee admission? Nothing can guarantee admission. Thanks for putting that word. Nothing can guarantee admission. I can tell you that based on my 6 years of experience. Nothing. 1600 out of 1600, 45 out of 45 in IB, or 95 out of 100 in your CBSE and ICSE will also not guarantee any admission. When I say guarantee, I mean you will get into a college, right? There are 1,000+ colleges in US, right? But will you get into top 5, top 10? There is no guarantee to it. Let me be very, very honest, because there are limited seats and there are people from different countries who are competing. In India, you're just competing with Indian students. Think about it, when you go abroad, you're competing with people across the globe, right? There are, I mean, I know a 10th grader who is currently running a company. I know an 11th grader who already has an a Web3 startup. I know another 12th grader who is running a social venture, which is at a pretty decent scale. So people are doing amazing things at this point of time. But yes, please don't do it just for the application's sake. Don't only do it if you are genuinely interested in it, because and go to the right fit college. That's a very, very important thing. I keep telling to all the parents and the student, go to a right fit college. I have seen students, unfortunately, who have gone to the best of the best colleges. Last year, I had one student who went to Berkeley, who could not cope up, and he had to get back to India in 1 year. And he was under immense mental pressure, right? So you don't want to go to a college where you are in the bottom 10%, because remember, you are going to a top college, you are already an A player, you are best in your school, in your city probably. And when you land there, you realize you are in the bottom 10 and you're not able to cope up, right? So you want to go to a college which is a right fit for you. This is a very, very important thing. And as a parent, for us to also remember, go to a right fit college. As a child, we need to figure out for my child, for my kid, which is the right fit college. Next question from Abraham. What is the average percentile to get into MIT in both SAT and ACT? There's nothing like that. I think you can go to the MIT website or any particular college website. You will be able to figure out in their admission undergrad thing, they have mentioned what is the average percentile score last year for SAT and ACT. So you should be able to figure it out. They tell you 25th percentile, they tell you 50th percentile, they tell you 75th percentile. What does that mean? So if you're looking at 75th percentile, that means if there are 100 people, 75 people have scored above this, right? So that is the 75th percentile. So go and check on individual college websites, Abraham. Next question from Himashi: is ACT not required for the UK university even if the student is from sciences? Not at all. You don't need ACT for UK. Rudra, which is the best board for SAT, IB or IGCSE, CBSE? SAT has no correlation with the curriculum, guys. Rudra, please go back and relook at the entire webinar once again. It'll help you understand. SAT is a separate test altogether. There is no best board or IB or CBSE for SAT. SAT is one such parameter. You shouldn't be even thinking about SAT when you're deciding between CBSE or ICSE. That should purely be based on other parameters, which I had just answered some time back. Next from Ziana. If you have given 2 attempts, which score would be counted? The second attempt was the score that is highest among the 2. Ziana, I just answered that question. I think Poonam had asked that question. So there are 3 different types of university: all score, best score, super score, right? So that's the answer to your question as well. And the question is from Zion. So is the training customizable enough for class 11 students that the student can maintain balance between school studies and preparation for the ST? And if there are school exams, so will the training compliance with it? I want to know about full training in relation to the above question. Definitely, Zion. Sharath, please note down Zion's query. Right, Zion, can you maybe drop a WhatsApp message to the below number? That's Sharath's number. And he will take you through all these details. Right, he'll help you understand all these questions. And yes, definitely the training is customizable. It is to an extent that you should, because as I said, I've myself been advocating about doing well in school. So I would never want you to compromise on your school grades in the pretext of SAT or ACT, right? So I want you to do well in your school grades, and then the SAT ACT comes into picture, right? So definitely that's how the training has been customized. Except ST or ST, what test do we have to give to get into top college? For US, there is no other test. As I said, there are only these 3-4 parameters that you need to fulfill, and that's pretty much. There are no further exam that you really have to give to get into US. Make sure your school academics are good, your test prep is sorted, and your profile is good, right? That's pretty much. Neither for Germany, Ridhima. Germany might have, again, university, they might have some interviews that you might have to give, but nothing apart from that. If you're looking at UK, because Ridhima, I think you were the one who mentioned about medicine. If you're looking to UK, then you might have to write UCAT, right? So there is a exam, UK CAT, that you will have to write if you want to apply to UK for medicine. And sir, can you please repeat the parameters as I joined late? When I will be sharing this recording, but the parameters are simple. So one is your school grades, that's super critical, almost about 60-70%. Then your test prep, which is SAT, ACTs, and AP exam. And then is your entire profile, internship, application, profile development, your essays, your letter of recommendations, all of that becomes part of your profile, right? So I hope that answers your question, Vian. There's a question from Dr. Pinky Priyank Mehta. Hello, sir. In your views for medicine, should a student complete MBBS in India and then apply for US, or directly take admission in US for undergrad? No, if the objective is to do it in US, you should do it in US directly, because you cannot do MBBS in India and then, then still a longer degree, right? Because there you again have to give their exam. Remember, there are few degrees which has to obey the law of the land, right? Like you can't study architecture in US and then do architecture in India. You have to still give an exam in India, right? Similarly for the doctors as well, right? So I would say if you're very, very clear, then you should apply to US. It's just that be very clear that it's going to be a long journey, right? You have to go through a pre-med and then get into the medicine. That's how it kind of works. That's all. I hope that answers your question, Pinky.
Yeah, myself, Dr. Pinky.
Hi, Dr. Pinky, yes.
Yes, sir. Thanks for your answer. One thing I want to ask you, that if my kid is preparing for NEET and SAT, then there is no need for science subjects for SAT, like physics, chemistry, biology.
Sorry, can you repeat again? If the child
the exam for SAT or SAT doesn't include the science subject?
No. There is no science involved in these, right?
Okay. So
that's what we just discussed, right?
Maths and English both, right?
That's right.
And after 12th, they get admission in the pre-med, no?
That's right, ma'am. That's very, very important. It's
I think
pre-med and
pre-med
not
is-
medicine directly.
Yeah, sir. That I know. That I know. And after MBBS, if she want to do, I think she need to give USMLE, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am. Okay, I have another question in the chat. Transiting from ICSE to IB, will it be difficult to cope given that we also need to prepare essay, SOP, APs, and also give SAT in 11th? Thanks for this question, Rima. It's an interesting question. Would it be difficult? Yes, it will be difficult because IB is a different curriculum. The way the marking happens is different. The way scoring happens is a bit different. The student will take time to kind of adjust to it. It's a very open-ended curriculum, unlike ICSE, where is a book prescribed and you do it. However, having said that, whether it's SOP, prepare essays, all of that, you still have to do even in ICSE or ISC for that matter, right? But you mentioned about APs. Remember, you can skip doing the APs if you're doing IB because you're already doing IB, so you're already getting college credits. So you shouldn't be doing the APs for the subject that you're doing in IB. In IB, you take certain subjects as higher level and standard level. Any subject that you do at higher level, you anyways get credits for it. So you can go ahead and do it without even doing the AP. So that's an advantage. So if you're doing IB, you don't have to do AP. If you're doing ICSE, then you're doing AP, right? So the workload kind of gets balanced out. I hope that answers your question, Rima. Next question is from Ridhima. Okay, so if you have done medical degree in Germany, can we apply for jobs in US? Ridhima, you will have to check for that. I am not probably the best person to answer that query. You should check that in on internet and probably talk to some of the counselor maybe for masters, because I don't think so you'll be able to apply for jobs in US. You'll have to basically go through certain tests for that. Next question is from Poonam Mathur. How does AP score help? Poonam, that's a big topic in itself, but on a very, very high level, it helps you to get college credits while you are in India. And if you get credits, you're basically saving cost. It helps you to showcase to the college that you have done more than what your peers have done. So if you've done AP course, you are strengthening your profile. So it helps in profile building. It helps in getting college credits. It helps to save cost, right? So that's on a high level, that's how AP helps. We'll be doing, as I said, another webinar on our YouTube channel. You can find actually a few webinars which we have already done for AP, just to get more understanding. Or you can reach out to Sharat, the number given here, and he can probably share the link as well. Ayush, you can note down Poonam's name. Maybe you can share on WhatsApp the AP webinar link also with Poonam. Next question is again from Dr. Pinky. Another question is compulsory for candidate to take maths as one subject in 11th and 12th, even if they are preparing for NEET or medicine in US? Great question. It's not mandatory, but remember, in the next 2 years, things could change and, the child might change their mind. So in that case, you might want to keep that option open, but it's not mandatory otherwise. You could do it without even maths.
Okay, sir. Does unki profile mein when they include the math subject, does the profile affect or not?
It's an advantage. It's an advantage for sure. But they should only do it if you feel the child could do well in maths, right? If you feel the child will not be able to do well, then you would not want to do it.
Because in India, for NEET, maths and biology both are the lengthy subjects.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. So you'll have to balance it out. And that's one of the reasons why I've been saying that be on one boat, don't be on two boats.
Yes, sir. Yes.
That's one of the reasons. So yeah, you got the point right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Pinky. Next, I have Ritu here. Preparing for AP begin in 11th grade. Ritu, you can actually start in 9th grade. I have students this year who have done AP in grade 9. So it all depends on what subjects you want to write. You could do it in 9th, you could do it in 10th, you could do it in 11th. It all depends on when you want to do it. Next is Rima. Sir, will you be sharing the link of webinar? I do want the link for AP preparations. Sure, Rima. We'll share the AP webinar link as well, and we'll be connecting one next month. So, you can ask all your live questions then. We'll share the AP preparation webinar as well. So ideally, if you want to prepare for APs, we'll have batches starting next month. So you should start preparing for it for the next year, May. If the child is in grade 9th or grade 10th or in grade 11, this is the time when you want to prepare for it, because remember, AP happens only once a year, which is in the month of May, unlike SAT and ACT. So it becomes super critical for you to make sure that you're well prepared for it without wasting any time. So the preparation becomes a lot more critical here, and especially for the student who are coming from CBSE and ICSE background. Next, I have a question from Nikhil Patel. Share the cost of SAT prep conducted by you. Nikhil, the cost varies depending on program to program. So I would say, drop a message to Sharat. He'll be able to give you details about all the different programs. Depending on which program you want to opt for, the cost will vary, right? There are group program, one-on-one program, full training, English only, maths only, light, it all depends on different models. Sharat, you can reach out to maybe Nikhil and help him understand about the cost as well, probably after the call. Great. Any other question? You've already extended it to 20 minutes. Great, but amazing questions. I think, I hope the session was useful. I hope I was able to, help you clarify a lot of your doubts. I think that was the main objective of this webinar. If in case, if you liked it, please do let us know. If there's any particular feedback, please do give us that. We'll be more than happy to reply. Post this webinar, we will also be sharing a short review link. If you can review our webinar on our website, it will be really, really helpful for us to reach out to more people. If in case you genuinely feel that the webinar was useful, I would request you to do that. Feel free to reach out to Sharat. He will be happy to answer any such questions, any more questions that you get. We'll be sharing the recording of this webinar. So we'll do some post-processing and we'll share it by end of the day today itself. So if in case you have missed out any part, please go back, reread it. If in case you can share it with your friends, that'll be really helpful again. We would conduct more such webinars every month. So we do one every month. Next month, we would probably be doing it on APs. I see there are already a lot of requests from the parents. So we'll be sharing the links with you guys. Please do register yourself for the AP webinar, which is happening next month again. Yeah, I can see a lot of thank you messages. Thanks a lot for all of you for patiently listening to me for the last 1.5 hours on a Saturday morning, giving important time. I think that's really helpful. I hope it was a useful session for you. I have a question from Abraham. Will it affect my 11th class SAT? I missed SAT in 9th and 10th class. No, Abram, you have to write SAT only once, right? It doesn't matter. It's not like you have to write it in grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. You could figure out what is the right time, and then you write your SAT. It doesn't really matter whether you have done it in 9th or 10th or not. But now, if you're in grade 11, do get in touch with Sharat at the earliest possible, maybe today, tomorrow itself, and get started. Get started on your SAT, because as I said, if you're in grade 11, it's a very, very high time that you start your prep and finish your SAT in the next 2 attempts. Psat, you don't have to write it. Psat is not mandatory, right? If in case you are not a US citizen, you're in grade 11th already, don't write the Psat. Leave it there itself, simple, right? I hope that's clear, Abram, right? And when you go back to the webinar, you will understand on the Psat section. Great. Any other question, folks? Anything else that you guys would want to? Okay, great. With that, I think we don't have any other question. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone once again for joining in on the Saturday morning, and we'll be sharing the recording link by the end of the day today, along with the link with Calendly link for you to book your meeting. Here's the number at the bottom. Feel free to drop a WhatsApp message and have a call. We might be expecting a lot of call to Sharat and his team, so please expect some delay. Just drop a WhatsApp message and he'll reach out to each and every one of you at the earliest possible, right? Oh, there's another question from Rima. Yes, please go ahead, Rima. Okay, I think she'll probably ask from Sharat itself. Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining in. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye, take care, stay safe.